Oh, tēnā koe. Kia ora. I'm just having a good look around. Ko tararua pai maunga, e rere ana ko o taki te awa, ko raukawa te moana, ko raukawa te marae, ko Ngāti Raukawa ki te tonga te iwi ko he mai mā ka ki wiramu ahau. So I just want to take a minute, maybe a couple of seconds, to recognise my first name. It's my mother's name, Hemaima, and I brought my mum's photo with me. I want to tell you the story, which is her pūrākau, among the other nannies and aunties, her cousins, who I was fortunate to have experience of and to be part of my life. But I'm going to tell you about her now, just in that small little bit there. But first, I've got to go back into Te Taiao, because we heard from Mark, which was brilliant listening to him, to remind us that actually we are always living in the realm of atua, tapu and noa. Papa Tuanuku is always with us. Ranginui is there. There's te ao, te pō, and we're in between it. We're in the middle. And there are spaces and places that we forget to experience because we're living in a modern world. We have to work, we've got to pay bills, we have children, we have whānau, and we have relationships. And in those particular aspects of ourselves, we forget to come back to who we are in this space, to acknowledge that we are also descendants from these atua, that tapu place that actually resides in us and in our te taiao in the whenua. So I was born in Otaki, and I've lived along this coast most of my life, and so I know Otaki and my relations further up the road, and Tūkorehe and Ngāti Wihiwihi. And what I've seen over the years, because Rongoa sits in our environment, is how it has changed through industry, through farming, market gardening, through housing development. And so what I've seen in my lifetime, and I was born in 1958, so I'll be 65 soon. So what I've seen is the way that our rongoa, our medicine, has been taken away, has been cut down, has been polluted, and how my mum and those nannies, how they transferred all that energy of destruction and adapted to other rongoa that was in place of it. So if we think about our ngahere being cut down, and we think about our fields that are there for farming, and what has come in, of course, is the red clover and various weeds from other from the Northern Hemisphere. And so one of the things they were smart about, and this is in the 60s, is to adapt and use the weeds and that rongoa with our own. With that awareness and knowing what's in our environment is the kaitiaki that is all around us, various kaitiaki. So a key one where I live is Mukukai. Mukukai is a kaitiaki in our stories that comes from the Maunga Taranaki, and he got spat out and he then swam along the coastline visiting the various communities along the way. So other iwi have different kōrero from Mukukai, and then his area is coming around Wellington over to Castle Point, our kahununu whānau over there. What Mukukai does when he comes is that he's a benevolent being, and he brings fish, but he also visits the streams that lead into the township. And so in Otaki, there are many, many underwater streams and springs. And so spring comes about September, October, and that's when the rongoa in particular is very potent. And that's when the mauri or the wairua is felt in the special places that we still have along this coast. So these were some of the stories I was told and some of the experiences that I had by being in these places, by recognising the timing. So we have our seasons, but our seasons may shift, and he may shift with the seasons. He may come later or he may come earlier. He may visit, and I say he because he is a he may visit numerous times depending on what the people need. He isn't often talked about anywhere, but I think in Otaki and me here, because he's a kaitiaki taniwha that is particular with Ngāti Raukura ki te Tonga. And those of us who have grown up with the old people around us telling us these stories. So the interesting thing about, those nannies, Mum had 14 children, and I'm number 11. And of she had 6 girls. But the interesting thing is that they lived their lives between this tapu and noa, because you sort the kids out, you feed them, you send them off to school, and then you go do other mahi. And then you go into your own space, which is a tapu space. Then you might have to visit the spring with the other nannies. Then you come back, 3 o'clock, the kids are coming home. You're back in noa. You're back in preparing for dinner. Maybe you got to send the kids down the shop, had forgotten things. So there was always this balance, This balance of living in this space where all the atua are around us and recognising that and stepping into that space and then stepping back. Yeah. So I watch my mum and these nannies, aunties do this mahi. So all my learning about rongoa comes from a woman's line. Yeah, it doesn't come down a male line for me, it's from a woman's line. So I'll talk about her queer, and I forgot to bring her photo. Her name was Rangi Ahuta Te Ao. And when I was going back further, when I was talking about how they watched the whenua, how there was impact on their land, and the medicine basket, which sits in Otaki in Haruatai. That's our old rongoa place. And when eventually that got taken out, most of it, and in 1972 they opened up a park and a swimming pool, and we went to the opening. It was very hard to see this, because this is a primal ngahere of kahikatia, tōtara, kohe here, to see that all go down. But one thing I remember, it was 1972, Labour Party, and I've forgotten the Māori minister from the far north, he was. Anyway, my mum said, it's all right. The heart of our ngahere is still here. And so at Haruatai, past the soccer fields, in another area is the old primal forest that's still left. And so this is a ngahere that we don't harvest from, but we take students and people in to feel the wairua and the mauri. It hasn't changed. And so we look after that ngahere, and it is a place to sit and to feel the pulse and your own pulse in rhythm with where you are. Huh? There are many places like that in this whenua, along this coastline, and it is haukainga that hold, I wouldn't say secret, but hold the pūrākau and keep it close to them to protect it. And, every now and again, you are given the privilege and taken to a spring that you didn't know was there, or to where a taniwha lives that is demanding attention. And these particular experiences happen frequently as a rongoa practitioner, as someone, and I say practitioner as a po rongoa, not a tohunga, because it's the pūrākau, the mātauranga comes through this female line. So what does that mean for us as, let's say, wahine in our whare tangata? Hey? What does that mean for us? So I can only talk about, well, a couple of things I can talk about. As a young woman at 13 and, becoming a woman, becoming someone who's going to be having their whare tangata in use and will bleed once a month. So of the 6 girls, I had issues, I had problems. I was often unwell, bled heavily during those times. And so fortunately for me, my mum, spotted straight away that I could be a candidate in future years for, what's that flash word? Endometriosis, yeah. And Mum couldn't say the word either, but she knew that it was a condition that could affect me. So her first line of rongoa defence was to keep me home from school every month for 2 to 3 days. And part of that was to stop me, to be still, to be in an environment, to be home with her, it was the best, to actually realise that this is, like, I hated every month because of that, but I realised that I was being treated like a princess. I wasn't allowed to do any dishes, didn't have to make the bed, I didn't have to do any housework. It was a way of telling me, you're in a state of tapu, you're precious, and you will eventually work with this energy that you have going on, which is a natural occurrence in our body, in my body. And so in those times, oh gosh, I was lucky. I went to those places where there were springs, where I could be shown, this is where my nanny used to get the water to do whakawātia for people. This is growing here because the taniwha demands that tainui should grow along this barrier here. Must never be taken away. So in those times of being in that kind of strange mamai, I was then being blessed with this ora, by just being still, by listening and being in a space with wahine, with these nenes. So from that experience, I've learned that probably none of us in here will give ourselves 5 minutes to sit and just, or maybe 5 minutes, you might give yourself 5 minutes to be still, maybe close your eyes, just to listen, just to sit out in the park, or even in your home. That's the first line of defence of rongoa. Be still, whakarongo. Do nothing. Try not to think. Our minds get in the way of thinking. And so what that happened was is that I became in tune with my whare tangata. And those particular issues had gone away, just faded away. She was forceful in bringing the school and saying, no, she won't be here for the next year in the first month, blah, 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 for 2 days, and that's how it is. So I had that experience. You may have other experiences that you need to pass on to your whānau, to your tamariki, to your cousins or nieces. One of the things that we don't talk enough about is our whare tangata and our experience. It's not actually looking at your navel. It's really having this deep relationship with yourself and knowing that this is my tapu self and this is part of my being of the atua. Very fortunate. Now, the thing that I was very lucky to be given is some kukuwai today. Yeah. And this is a medicine that I have used, or my mum used, And that was to mix it with oil, yeah, pound it, mix it with oil, and then just put on my pito. And just let me sleep with that on my pito. We have this notion that there needs to be some kind of physical interruptive action for healing, rather than engaging with people to start their healing process. So as a po-rongoa, what I learnt is, how do we engage with people who need some healing? How do we assist them to facilitate their healing? Because it's not from us as I stand here. This is not my job to heal you or heal anyone, but it is my job to help you facilitate that for yourself and to support this process. One of the other things that we don't talk about as well is that with the revival of rongoa, with the sense of tapu, what is sacred, the thing is that we are then accessing the other realm, the other Wairua realm, the dreams. I dreamt a lot and had visionary dreams at that time because I was given the space to do that. And to be not afraid of our spiritual pathway or our wairua that is trying to ignite us to be who we truly are, but to actually integrate that into our lives, and how do we then transform that into our community around us, our whānau around us. Because one of the things when our people are having wairua issues, and I say issues or wairuatanga that's happening to them, is that people around them get really frightened. People around them want to go to a mental health institution or go to a mental health area in their lives when it's not a diagnosed issue. It's not a diagnosed issue. It's actually part of who we are. And it's about having that discernment of knowing what is right, wairua, what is distress, and what's in your head. You know, these things that we are always transforming, or the pathways that we are walking around us. So I say this because a number of wahine have come and they're having, what was the kōrero? I'm having these mad dreams. I said, and when is it are you having it? It's when I'm having my period or when it's full moon. I said, okay. So what can we do for you? What can we do for you? What is the first thing was, okay, let's step back. Let's see what's happening in your life. You getting any rest? What are the hours you're working? Oh, I'm working long hours. I've got the blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, you need to cut that down. There are simple things that we can do before we actually even get to the rongoa, before we get to the rākau. We want to put some focus on the hininaro and the wairua before we go to the tinana, because those are areas that are ignored and forgotten in a healing processes. So one of the key rongoa, and because I was healed in the way that my mum healed me, I didn't need this. But the key rongoa is here on the table, which is kohe kohe. And I have a kohe kohe that tree that grows in my garden, Sinaldi. The thing about kohe kohe, it's wonderful to use for wahine who are having either headaches, nightmares, hormonal issues, doesn't matter what age, whether you're having that big flash word, endometriosis. Yeah, whether you're having those problems. And one of the key things about having that problem is that you do need this. You do need this. Yeah. Easy dosage. And I'm not going to talk dosage and how we would prepare it, because I don't want people to go and do that. Hey? Because there's tikanga, there's kawa that we've got to follow. But that is what we use. And one of the things about our rākau and Pourongoa is that we are aware that particular rākau, like this one here, kohe kohe in my garden, I know that it has a kaitiaki inside that rākau. I know that it is intelligent. I know that it is speaking in a way that is through feeling, that is through just showing, by being quite visible in its magic. And so this rākau, I think it's about 400 years old when they looked at it. It is blooming early. The flowers are hanging from it, from the branches. And, it doesn't start doing that until, this is March coming up near, until actually May. So it's jumped ahead because of the climate, because it's warming up. And I wonder what that will do to it. Yeah, I wonder if the potency of its medicine, and that's, will change because it's blooming too early, it's flowering too early, because it has a special rongoa when it flowers. Usually flowers in the middle of winter in June, has a wonderful, hits on a full moon, and it just glows up at night because the full moon hits it and it's just the white flowers. So I wonder what it's going to do. I have to wait. And I have some thoughts about it. Yeah, have some thoughts about it. I think, and we all know, what's happened recently with the cyclone. We all know we need to be prepared. And that's one of the thoughts. Oh, yeah, okay. So one of the things that happens when I give these talks, and I'm just going to say it. Look, I have it all sorted what I'm going to do, and then that never happens. And I get clear information, and my whanaunga over here, Maru, she calls it a drop down. And I thought, well, yeah, I wish I would drop down at other times. But the kōrero that I've been asked to talk about, which people don't think is a rongoa, but again it is. And because we think that rongoa is always just a rākau, because rongoa is the environment that we live in, rongoa is us. But my mum also wanted, and her friends were also matakite, hey? So that part of who we all are, we are matakite. And we have to be grounded with this awareness, eh? Can't be flying off into la la land. Got to be grounded. And I was very fortunate to watch how grounded they are when they were in their matakite phase. So I brought the teapot and the teacup as an example. So I wish I had my the other queer's photo, but Mum had a very good friend, Mrs. McGowan, who was an Irish-Scottish woman who was a tea leaf reader, lived in Manukau, and she was known as a healer and a matakite. So one of the things watching them, when you sit and you have a cup of tea after church and you might have cream scones and jam, and drink that, and then an energy shifts. It changes. They've gone from this ordinary thing to reading the tea leaf. And then she tips, you put the tea cup on the saucer, and then you turn it 3 times. So as a young person, 11 years old, I was watching this, I'm fascinated. What's this queer doing? She's turning. So I ask her, what are you doing? She says, well, when you turn the cup 3 times, you're turning it from the mundane, ordinary world into the other world of the sacredness. And she says, now I'll turn it up and I will look into the cup and read. But I'm not just reading the tea leaves. I am imbibing, I am feeling the the breath of that person who has just drunk the cup. And then I realised in that one instant, it went from ordinary to tapu, just like that, by the action of this woman and the knowledge of what she had. And then I was kicked out because I wasn't allowed to hear the reading. But I knew what was going on. And it was so simple. And it's often those simple, practical things are missed. You miss it because we are, through Hollywood movies, and just sensationalism on Facebook or any other media, we are expecting something fantastic or fantastical. But actually, tapu sacred is right next to us in the ordinary daily life. Right? Hey, what's our time? Because I better get on to this. Nearly one. Finish at 2. Okay, we're going to move this way because it takes a bit of time, and I'll just keep talking. So I have 2 rongoa practitioners here, MJ and Aroha Kona. MJ, come over here. And what I've made, so, rongoa is sitting in that sacredness of what those rākau are to various people. It's just sitting in our gardens, it's sitting in the environment. And so I'll just pick them up here. So all these come from my garden. So I've got a big garden, it's about an acre. So there's tainui, okay? Tainui's lovely. Very strong rongoa, good for muddy chest, clearing our chest. Also clears the sinuses. And when you least expect it, it clears your mind. Yeah, because if you're congested here, you're congested elsewhere. It's usually in your head. So that's what that does. And then in the garden I've got I've got lavender. Yep. And a weed that likes a lot of water actually grows near unga, native stinging nettle. And that's balm of Gilead. It's very, very aromatic. And of course, have you seen it everywhere along this coast? It's fennel. Right? It's everywhere. So it's in my garden too. And I cut it back, but I also use it because it's a great medicine. And so just like my mother and the nannies, they adapted, they use rongoa, native, and also other herbs and weeds that are around us. So one of the good treatments for those of us who are stressed, for those of us who are having can't slow down because there's too much happening in our world, and for anyone who has any puku problems, and puku meaning if you have emotional problems, where do you feel it first is in the gut, Where do you feel fear for most people? It's here. And so a foot bath or a hot bath, if you haven't got a bath, a foot bath is great. So I, last night or the other day with my daughter Tupi Order, we made up a Epsom salt bath soak or foot bath soak, and we used these rongoa here. Now, you notice I've only used the one native one, the one kumara, hau or tainui, because it's potent. It's really strong, okay? And you don't need a lot. So I've used that with these other non-natives. And then they've been dried. And then they, people get one of those coffee blender things. Yep. Well, I've got 3 for herbs and rongoa. And then I blend it up. And together, we mix it together, me and my daughter. We do our karakia because we want to put good energy, good healing thoughts into this this bowl of salts. And we want, we also put on the good music because we want that vibe. You know, we do a little dance in the kitchen, come back, you know. So it is all about the mauri, yeah. It's all about not being serious. You know, part of our healing is to have your attention off the issue and to be in the world of order, not always stuck in mate. I say that because recently I've lost 2 brothers and it's been a struggle to bring ourselves back into order, yeah? And so I'm working on it. And so we did this last night. It brings us a lot of joy. The other thing that we use, because we can, is the way. Because I said, well, why would we put those in? Because we can. I said, okay, we'll do that then. That was my daughter's answer. So we've got thyme. Now, I know that thyme's a great healer, antifungal, many, many things. Litsea, has people heard of Litsea? It's a type of pine that's from the northern hemisphere. It's great. It works like cedar is another one. Yeah. Tangerine or orange in aromatherapy is uplifting. Yeah. And it's a lightness, and that's what we bring. So we've got very woody things in this mix here, but then we also want to bring some lightness in, and this is what the essential oils are about. Now, one of the things, I think if my mum and those nannies had essential oil, they'd be using them every day. But they didn't in the 60s in Otaki, you know. Never heard of such a thing. And they didn't. So, with that soak, you know, I encourage people, get that bowl where you're going to put your feet in. Get the salts, put it in, have the water there. Prepare yourself. Make your wahi tapu in your space. Have your music ready. Offer yourself this gift. Don't do it for anyone else. Do it for yourself. And then understand that the rongoa that's there, the medicine that's there, is calming, is revitalising you. It's going to pull out toxins. You know, it's going to act as also withdrawal of toxins, which is what the Epsom salt is about. And also the power of aromatherapy. And think about the smells that you like. What are the memories that takes you back? You know, is it lavender? Is it rosemary? Is it lemon? What are those memories? For me, lavender always reminds me of the nannies, you know, and I like that smell. And gift yourself that time. Yeah. And so part of the things that we do, like you can buy these things in stores, you've seen them, and they're also online. But it is a gift to yourself when you start making it for yourself. Because these are things you can gather, and you're not going to harm yourself, you know. There's about 2.2 kilos, 2.7 of Epsom salts in there to make at least a bag, 40 bags, you know. And because we are spreading that rongoa out in that base, none of it is going to irritate your skin. Yeah, because you've got to think about how sensitive you are. But because you got a balance, and we measured things, you can measure things to get the balance, but actually you've got to trust as an experienced pourongoa, I trust how I'm going to balance things without measuring. Yeah, but you might find other ways how to do that. The other thing that I've got here, and see this this salt thing, I used to have these when I was a kid with my mum, and feet in there. Never had the nice smells though. But this, the other thing that was also a real treat was afterwards when you dry your feet, you need to anoint your feet. Eh? You know, people go, oh, you just put the oil on and midi-midi. No. It's an anointment. You anoint yourself. You bless yourself. You end this wāhi tapu with this last phase, which is the anointment, the oil. So the oil that I have here, and these all come from my garden, is, and I forgot to bring the plant to show you, is the geranium plant that I infused in olive oil. You can infuse it in grapeseed, any oil, but I've infused it in olive oil. And that, after you dry your feet, and that is a quality of practice that you may give yourself, that we all give ourselves, give each other this practice. Yeah, that it's a reminder that these medicines that are all around us are there for us to utilise, and that then we, once we're in balance because of the rongoa we have used, we then become rongoa for someone else, because we're in a good space. You know, oh look, my eyes are so bright. You know, I've had a detox foot bath. So I encourage people to do this, to make their own. You can get the bath salts, you can buy it. I have tried that. It's got no mauri. You know, when you make things, your life force is in there. That's the rongoa. So I go there, oh, there's no mauri. You probably will find, if you do buy things, is at markets, because you know that person's made it. Yeah, you like the look of that person, yeah, I can buy that. Yeah, there's mauri there, there's wairua there. Yeah, I can get some healing for that. Now, one of the things that I'm not good at, I can make things and do it, but oh look, I can't be bothered putting them in the thingy. I've got to pass that job on. You know, and they know I'm hopeless at that. Now, the thing is, I haven't got labels for these, but I think I've given you the recipe for what I've just made, and I think this is recorded, so it's there, and it can be then just put up on the network here, if they need it. Yeah. Because being a Pourongoa, someone who works with whānau, hapu, iwi, is that we're not in a mainstream on purpose. We those who do, it's a challenge. Hey? If we've been raised and have been taught in our hometowns amongst our own people, this is not a Western model where we can regulate and commodify and become of a system that actually does not include te taiao, does not include our mātauranga, our whakapapa. And so, you know, I just make a small mention about the therapeutics bill that's going out there, that all of us have made submissions. Some of us have been talking about it on TV. And, you know, the herbalists that are our allies, who it's going to affect, we're all involved in protecting this taonga, because that's what we are protecting as a taonga, because actually human beings have forgotten that they're taonga. Hey? And so we're not separated from our environment. We have to rethink how we do things. We have to return as best we can the whenua, the awa, the very air we breathe to the to its um, to its full capacity of its atuatanga, really. And so, you know, we're in challenging times. And, you know, I think about these nannies who wasn't sure what was going to come but said to us, you have to stay strong. Stay strong, keep it simple, keep it pure, and you'll get looked after. Yeah? And so those of us, and there's many across the motu, who have had these teachings in the way that I have, but in their rohe, we do network, we do kōrero to each other. We do try to support each other. So what we have as a strength is our knowing, is our mātauranga, is whanaungatanga, we know how to manaaki each other, and what we're up against. And let's be real, it's money. It's just money. It's got policy written around it, it's got laws written around it, but it's about money. Yeah. And we've got to be clear that's what it is. You know. And so we just have to stand and be the people we are. So one of the things that when this reading comes through, and we're thinking, oh, should we protest? I said, no. We're supposed to be, we're rongoa people. We don't go wave banners. But we could all go and have a cup of tea at Parliament on their lawn. We can all take our rongoa teacups and our drinks, and then we can go offer, you know, wairako to whānau. So our thought was, well, if we can, we'll all turn up and have a tea party. And that's the blessing of being rongoa, because we can be in our rongoa selves, or we can be in our activism self. Or we could just be centre and actually use rongoa, because it is an action, an activity. It is about saving, actually, humanity. Now, have we done everything? No, you got to do it now. Yeah. You got to do this now. Yeah. Oh, I'm bossy too. Sorry, I wasn't clear. Yeah, we're going to bag all these because there's too many. Yeah. So I was hoping, like I'm up here because you're all out there, and I was hoping you might have some questions. Because I like questions. Because I might just turn on someone, and I'm looking at her now. Kia ora. Oh, great. Kia ora.
You were saying before that when you sit in your place and try and stop thinking, what's one way what's a way that you use to stop thinking?
Okay. One thing is I do have a really good playlist. I put it on. It's very calming music. And I've found it's taken me a couple of years to get this playlist, because you've got to find what helps you empty out this. And I put that on and I'm gone for, I don't know, half an hour, because it stops me thinking. But I've already set up my space, got my foot bath ready, got my music going, and then I just sit back. Yeah. So, you may have another way. You may go for a walk along the beach. That's another one. But if you're in an apartment, you're in a city, can't get there, that's one way. Thanks for the question. Kia ora. Anyone else before I turn to Maru? Oh, good. Oh, ka pai.
Ngā mihi whaia.
Kia ora.
What native plants would you suggest having in your own mara, in your own garden?
What ones would I suggest?
Yes, natives.
Okay. The ones that I suggest here along this coast is karamu, because it grows everywhere and it's a wonderful rongoa, and it's an important one that we use. And we use it to clear out our systems, to flush the system. It's great for diabetes, and cholesterol, lowering cholesterol. The other one, kawakawa, grows anywhere and everywhere. It's one that I don't talk about often because it's just everywhere, but it's fantastic. And there are a lot of research on it. Have you seen a lot of the research that's online? Through Wakatu is in partnership with some scientists who are doing research on kawakawa. Kohe is one that you find along here in Wellington, along this coast. What's another one that grows easily? Oh, matipo, red matipo. They're go-tos, yeah. And matipo is a mild painkiller, and also thins the blood so it lowers the blood pressure. Yeah? Okay. Oh, I think there's a question at the back there. I'm just saying, I'm pretending. I'm just trying to, come on, people. Now's your chance. Kia ora. Okay.
If you experienced rongoa in any other cultures, what parallels can you draw?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Good question. Yes, I have. So I lived in Australia for a number of years, and I did have a connection with the Aranda people from Alice Springs. Same kind of tikanga and kawa, like always karakia before they do anything, and always begin and end. The rongoa that, especially out in the desert, was about their kukuwai. Hey? Was about this, and it was about how the air flows across the desert. It was amazing. But also in America, where I met women from Appalachian mountains, the kuia, who grew the various herbs around her property, and she had a veranda, and also under the veranda. And this was all about protection. It was all about keeping bad energy out, making sure good energy comes in. She was a well-known runga practitioner in this town, and in particular how she would heal people from cancer. But all the runga practitioners that I have met overseas and in the cultures, we have the same thing. We know that it is the environment we're living in that is important, because that's where the rongoa lives and sits. We know that each rongoa, each plant, she had pūrākau about lavender, she had pūrākau about mugwort. Does anyone know mugwort? Yep. She had pūrākau about mugwort from where she comes from, and which was hilarious actually. And she had, she knew what we would call kaitiaki of the particular plants. None of it has been lost for these herbs that come from overseas. It's just been turned into folklore, yeah, and not actually in the same way that we know it's still present. The practitioner of her calibre knew it was always present. And, it was only, it was in 1980 I met that woman. So that's what I found around the world. We all have the same whakaaro. Yeah. And we all know that it's us who are going to make the difference. I was going to say, people talk about climate change, eh? Look, it's us, we got to change. We all know that. Climate just is a normal thing. It's changing all the time. It goes through its cycles. Yes, I think we have a question at the back here.
Tēnā koe, nā mihi ki te, nā mihi kia koe ki te kororo. You were talking about kawakawa, and you also were talking about tea. I know that kawakawa tea is very popular and useful. I was wondering if there are any other herbs, any other rongoa you would suggest that would work in for tea.
Okay. So I'll talk about this one here which and she was a tohunga rongoa practitioner, Tia Whina. And she loved making tea from tainui or karamu this is the only one we would give to pregnant women. Yeah? And that was to nurture the baby in the womb, to strengthen the body, and because a lot of women have low blood pressure and lift the blood pressure to a balanced level. So, like I can't drink this, eh? This one would raise my blood pressure. I can't drink this. But for pregnant women and those ones with low blood pressure, this is the tea that she would make was from this. We do make tea from all our rongoa, and we may make a balanced blend. And again, it's about what are we trying to do? If a person has a condition, what is it that we need to blend and mix in that tea? Yeah, because some people over blend, and what you get is nothing. You get nothing. Just a strange kind of drink. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So today there seems to always be this emphasis on gather or hauhaki or take. Can you talk about the reciprocity of your practice?
Yeah. One of there are areas where we would never take. There is reciprocity. Look, atua, the actual kaupapa of rongoa, you will receive what you get, you will receive what you give out. So if you play up, let's put it that way, if you play up, do some dumb things, which I have heard people do, as in go into a place, this is one key thing. I'm never going to rongoa out and hauhaki outside of my rohe, eh? I'll never do that. I don't whakapapa to certain areas. I don't know the pūrākau, so I'm never going to take from there. Even if I think, oh, that's so beautiful. Well, just look at it, it's beautiful. But I don't come from there. I don't know those people from there. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. So there's this thing, you only hauhaki from where you are allowed to, where you have been taught. Yeah, that's one thing. Reciprocity, when I've seen this go down and someone do that, well, you know, you pay through strange bad luck, you pay through that accident. How many accidents did you have in 2 weeks, 3? Why do you think that is? Especially people who have had some training and then they go and do the opposite. What do we get back from rongoa by doing the right thing? One, I think you become well, or you maintain a wellness. 2, and people use that name manifestation. I don't think it's that. It's just that the universe or the mauri or the atua repays you in kindness, repays you in your mokopuna as well, your whānau as well. You have enough money to live well, to live comfortably. I've never seen a wealthy, rich rongoa person in monetary terms, but I have seen a wealthy, rich rongoa person in every other way. Yeah. So when I was teaching at the wānanga, Te Wānanga o Aotearoa, key things we start off is tikanga and kawa, which brings in where you can hauhaki, where you can't, why you can't and why you can, and encouraging people to plant their own rongoa, to plant the herbs around them, to join a group and look after a particular area, if that's what you want to do. If you don't come from a particular area but you live here, well, go join some group that's out there so that you can get into the business of being part of this environment and caring for. So, you know, we And it's a wānanga, and I will mention this. One of the things about where we are now today in this environment is that our rongoa is at deficit. Eh? We're losing a lot. So part of the rongoa, like I said before, is yourself and how you're going to revive rongoa in your small space. 'Cause you don't need to get big with this. Start small. And then how are you going to think, and it is about use your intelligence to move this forward. Yeah. And when I say move this forward, who do you network with? Who do you make those whanaungatanga connections with on this kaupapa of protection, manaaki and care? Because that's how you give back to what they've given us. So here's one thing, which I'll mention about going with, he's a tohunga, Rehua Kiriama, in West Auckland, about 16 years ago. So part of the rongoa for when he's taking groups in, is we just walk slowly through the Ngahere out west, and then to sit in a space, and because there's about, 20 of us, and then actually fall asleep in the space because the rongoa is simply around us. So you don't need to often take and make. We just need to go to those places that have that particular, I think the Japanese call it, is it bathing, forest bathing? I think they have a word for it. You just need to go sit in Te Taiao. You just need to be. And then you may figure out, what do I need to do for this place here, for this whenua here, for this awa? Because that actually might be your rongoa, that you become kaitiaki. Yeah. Because rongoa, pou rongoa is always a kaitiaki. I'm always, I think I'm amused by these ones that, you can spot them and they're always advertising and selling, always advertising and selling, and I wonder what their rongoa actually is. That's a red flag for me, advertising and selling their goods. It's a red flag because they're putting this vastness and this greatness of what rongoa is into a small container, and then they're selling it profusely online. And maybe I'm being very judgmental about that. Well, I am. And I am because, I come from these old girls. This is how they taught me. And I think that's a kawa that is very clear for me. Yeah. Any other questions? That's a good question. Thanks, Isaac.